going to get really simple, actually. Our next speaker, yes, one of our themes is sort of around, one of our themes at the Autumn School is, we do actually have themes, and one of them is just the human spirit and exploration and polar explorers and why explore. So in trying to get a speaker for that, and it's probably the most difficult topic to get a speaker for it, we're very fortunate to meet our next presenter, Synnøve, who is, among lots of other qualifications and achievements, is chairperson of the Norwegian chapter of the Explorers Club. So who better to tell us about why explore? Synnøve.
Shackleton expert, so I'm just going to come out and admit that straight up. I'm going to touch on a couple of connected yet different subjects during this talk. And as Kevin said, he asked me to talk about inspiring explorers, which the difficulty with that is keeping it within 5 minutes. So we'll see. I'm going to start off with a letter written more than 100 years ago to the King of England. And this does have a Shackleton. I'm then going to reflect on how we treat stories that we stumble across. I mean, many of you in this room come across documents and persons from the past that you research. So how do you process that information that you find? I'm also going to try and make this all come together and talk about how and why a young boy from Lancashire, or anyone else for that matter, become inspired by explorers. People who seemingly do things that very few people can ever experience, and experiences that almost by definition out of reach. My thoughts on this subject are not scientifically founded, but a result of years in the exploration community. We're very fortunate to be amongst socialising and working with extremely inspiring explorers. I'm clearly not here to tell you how to do research on Shackleton or anything else as such. If I can make you think one more time about the stories that you know, you heard, or you found, and then put away, then I'll be satisfied. The handling method crossed my path at Finse 1222. Some of you know this place. It's a mountain lodge situated on the railway line between Oslo and Bergen in Norway. It's not accessible by roads. You have to go there by train, or skis, as many people do. Shackleton, Anderson, Nansen, amongst others, would go there and train and test their equipment, their men, their plans before the real expeditions. There is a process here to tempt you to visit us, but also to show you why this is an ideal training ground for explorers. Finse is used in the exact same way today by modern-day explorers prepping to go to polar regions. And it's also the location of the annual expedition Finse Expedition Festival. And guests this past February, including your very own Kevin Kenny, as well as John Shears, who's in the audience here, I think. And I found myself one evening around the table with these gentlemen, and to know that it's shock and surprise conversation centered around Shackleton. So Kevin shared with us a presentation that was due to hold in Oslo a few days later, and there it was. The handling letter. It is a lovely letter. So, young B. Hamlin wrote this to His Majesty the King, and it's hard to see the small writing out. I'll read that loud. Dear Sir, will you please try to persuade Sir E. Shackleton the Explorer to take me to the South Pole with him? My parents are agreeable. If I don't go, my life will be wrecked. I think we can all feel that sentiment, right? Oh, please do your best. If you succeed, please send word quickly. I would live in a cold place if I can only go. I'm not joking when I say that. Yours truly, B. Hamlin. And to me, there was something mesmerising about this letter. And who was this boy who not only knew about Shackleton's upcoming expedition, but he dreamt of going one stage. Not only that, he actually took steps to make it happen. What happened with it? Did he go on the expedition? And it did not help one bit when Kevin told me it had not been researched in detail. So he sent me the letter, and there was a brand new rat hole to pull down and try and uncover. So the letter has been in the Troyecki family archives for some years. Jan Troyecki is a custodian of his grandfather's archives. They have the request expedition. So he has an extensive archive from that time. It has the stamp of the King's Private Secretary's Office on the back, so we know the letter reached the Royal Palace, stating this letter has not been acknowledged, was dated on the 21st of July, 1921. There's also a type note of Adam later, saying, letter sent to His Majesty King George V by an 11-year-old boy during the planning of the Shackleton Road Antarctic Expedition 1921-22. So who was this bee happening? The last things that give some hope that it would be easy to find it. Unfortunately, Hamling wasn't as rare a surname as I was hoping. So through multiple steps, process of elimination and comparing different sources, chasing around in circles in this rabbit hole, I was able to scratch the surface on Albert Victor Hamling, an aspiring explorer. Albert Victor Hamling was born on the 7th of January 1906 in the village of Blackburn. His father, Albert Victor Sr., was born in 1881 in Hampshire, and by age 15, 1896, his father's family lived in the area where Albert Victor was born. The mother, Frances Mary Aiken, was born in 1879 in Preston, Lancashire, and they married in April 1903 in Clayton Moors, so this all happens in the same area. They had 4 children, Audrey Vincent, Albert Victor, Francis and John, all born between 1904 and 1909, of which Albert Victor is the second. Soon after the youngest brother is born, this also strikes the family. So we can find from public records that in August of 1909, Albert Victor Sr. dies, aged 29. Possibly from pneumonia, that's unconfirmed, that's what the records look like. Here's his burial lands in the Haslington Gazette on the 28th of August 1909. Frances, 32 years old, finds herself a widow with 4 young children aged 5, 3, 1, and a newborn. Albert Victor was 3. So if we trace this family through public records, we'll find in the 1911 census, the family was split up. Frances, the mother, is registered in Sutton, St. Helens. She lives there together with father Robert, who's retired from the army, the Walker family, who is her sister and her sister's family, they're all related in-laws, and the boarder named John Scott. In the same census, Victor and his 3 siblings were now 7, 5, 3, and 2 years old. They are registered living with the grandmother, their aunt and uncle in 14 Winfield Street, which is the address that the family was listed on when the father died. So they're all still there. And by the 1914 electoral registers, the mother Frances is back living with her children. So we're getting a little bit closer to the time when the letter is written, and not quite yet, but we can see this sort of Albert Victor's life forming to the time when he wrote the letter. In 1915, Frances and Mary John Scott, remember the boarder from the 1911 census, they are now married. And by 1921, for the 1921 census, they had 2 sons, Robert and Walter. So in 1921, in the census, Albert Victor now 15, not 11, as the back of the letter says. His sister Frances 13, and John inspired by Shackleton, perhaps, but maybe also a little bit desperate to get away. So this is the setting, as far as we can tell now, 100 years later, that letter is written in. John Scott worked as a guard at the London North Western Railways. Albert Victor, 15, worked as a sheep repairer with London North Western Railways at St Helens Junction. Here is a photo of sheep repairs at St Helens Junction. It's a couple of years before his time, but it is from the same era. This is the original 1921 census, and these records are quickly becoming much more accessible to us. When I started looking into this in February, just after we found this this record had been digitized, but the transcript was not available to me. So I can go back to the original, and I'll point out in a minute why that's important. A lot more records from this time are now becoming readily available, especially the 1921 census, having passed 100 years ago. And for those of you who researched this time, this is a good time to go back and look for those people that you previously tried to find information on. Because this only found a few weeks ago, and this was not available in February. Here's an example of how people go missing from history, unless we go looking for them. And also, we have all these great new tools, automatic reading and digitizing documents. We need to go and check. I wanted to know what the oldest sister was in 1921, as she was missing from the register with the rest of the family. So she would have been 17 at this time. We find her in the 1921 census being automatically read and registered into searchable documents as Audrey Millicent Huntley. And only by searching around in circles and narrowing that down, and then going to the most likely source, did I find Audrey Millicent Hambley, which is what is actually written in the record. So this has been read, automatically read and registered inaccurately. She worked in a local hospital as a ward mate at a time when Albert Victor wrote the letter. My point is, this is a reading and registration error, and there are many more of those that I come across, so keep looking even if you don't find that same way. In July of 1926, 5 years after he wanted to go on the quest expedition, Albert Victor married Lily Copley in Prescott, Lancashire. In 1937, their son Gordon was born. In 1939 register seen here, Albert Victor and Lily were registered living in 237 Beach Lane in St Helens. The resident 3 and 4 in their household is still closed, so it will be a few years before we can access that, but maybe another child or another person living in their household. Albert Victor still has the same profession. Albert Victor died in September of 1964, aged 58 years, in St Helens. His wife Lily died in September of 91. In St Helens. Their son Gordon married Margaret Kendall in August 1958 in St Helens. Gordon died in 92, his wife died in 1997, both in St Helens. I've traced the sentence from Albert Victor's half-brothers, so this is the Scott half-brothers, and the family of Gordon's wife Margaret. However, they have nothing to add to the story, and did not know him personally. So I want to put the Hamblin lecture into a greater context and reflect on how we treat those stories that we find, or in the case of this letter, sometimes they find us. A friend and fellow shipwreck researcher once told me it's not enough to find the story, you also have to catch it. And those stories that we know, hear, find, stumble across, what do we do with those? So some people archive them away, to us are exciting or interesting, and then some go down the rabbit hole. So, some stories just hide in plain sight. They're just waiting to be found, put together and told. And they're like puzzles. The worst kind of puzzles, and the best. The sort where you may have most of the pieces, but you don't really know because a little bit of box is missing and it's been mixed up with pieces of other puzzles to distract you. And actually, there is a puzzle you will never ever complete. You just have to accept that straight off. And all we know is there are no corners or edges to define it. It may be infinite. But once the pieces start to fit, there's just no end to my discovery. To some, that's discouraging. To others, that's problem begging to be solved. Personally, I'm an archaeologist, so I'm trained to accept that this is my fate. And to me, it's thrilling. To others, I know not so much. And the first thing you taught as an archaeology student is you cannot prove anything. So that is, so working with historical sources is quite rewarding in comparison. So I've fallen down quite a few rabbit holes, as my guess, which has forced me to reflect on how to catch and tell these stories, because they come with a responsibility. So are they your stories? How far does your freedom to tell them reach? Are they yours to tell? Are you the right person to tell them? Are you maybe the only person who can tell? Or perhaps you shouldn't. Perhaps there's a reason these stories are untold. And why are they not told? Why are they not understood or remembered before? Was it the time in which they played out? Was it the circumstances, the context? Maybe they're just not very important. And what are the repercussions of writing these stories, then capturing them, and telling them? Are there consequences perhaps for individuals living today that should be considered? And is it in fact your responsibility, not just your privilege, to tell them once you've found them? Is it okay to sit on historical pieces of information without sharing them? So clearly these are a lot of questions and I'm not going to answer all of them because these are things we should reflect on when we do historical research. And they should perhaps be answering all of those questions, all those stories that are found and told. And just like the story was shaped by the time in which it unfolded, how we tell it many years later will be impacted on how we understand it in our contemporary time, with pieces unavoidably missing. We don't have the big picture. And the storyteller will also unavoidably bring their own perspective into the storytelling. On the other hand, we also have the benefit of being able to put them in a large context. Benefit of hindsight is always great. So I'm going to do a little detour. This is definitely not Shackleton related at all. There's a couple of examples of some of the things I've talked about, other stories that I've worked on and tried to catch. And they represent very different results of what you might find, starting from one point, one piece of information. An old suitcase crossed my path. This large travel trunk type suitcase. Lots of stickers, initials, these initials, some indication of ships and dates, and this making periods. So this was sitting in my home, and I couldn't lay down. And again, through many days of search and verification, I identified the previous owner. Phyllis White traveled the world in the 1940s onwards with her husband Bryant, who worked in shipping. Often listed as a wife to be Lily White, some details were needed to verify they had been right individuals. They sailed on the great ocean lines at the time, being married with Elizabeth, Washington, Franconia, the Empress of Canada, ships with interesting stories in themselves. They stayed at the Drake Hotel in New York and legendary place, went to safaris, the Mediterranean, and the stickers on the suitcase matched with immigration records told the story. There are indications in public records that Phyllis worked as an ambulance worker during World War II. It's unverified as of yet, but some public records indicate that, so I haven't given up on finding that. And then this 1946 immigration record, which you'll be completely unable to read, but I promise you. She's arriving in New York City on a ship, is listed with mark of identification, trapped in a wound right leg. So these clues were motivating to me. I located the descendants of Brian White, who are descendants from Brian and his first wife, who passed away when their daughter was very young, before he met Phyllis. They were thrilled to add some context, and also the family had actually published Brian's World War I diary, so it felt like they would be interested in learning more about family history. And it also made it easier for me to tell the story, that these were not her direct descendants. I didn't have to deal with the dilemma of who owns the story. So they were able to add to Phyllis' story. I asked the family if she was adventurous, and they said they never really thought of her that way. But when they did reflect on which probably was, because he definitely broke the mold. Brian didn't drive. Phyllis would roam around the Surrey countryside in a huge big Bentley, and this was seen very atypical for women in the 1950s. She kept travelling the world alone after her husband died, and now a very small cat sleeps on her suitcase in Oslo. We still don't know how it ended up in Oslo. We still don't know about her World War II activities, and I'm still eager to find out about the Shackleton movement, which the family didn't know about. So still some pieces of the puzzle. But I'm putting this in here to make the point that some untold stories don't impact on the course of our understanding of world events, but there are still lots of pieces of the puzzle to be found. Telling Phyllis' story doesn't change history. It's still an interesting thing with an exercise to do. Other stories do change the course of events, and understanding them adds value beyond the core story. Again, not Shackleton related, but related to how you capture a story and what you do with it and where you might end up. So this particular rabbit hole started very small. We had no idea where it would bring us. So I want to ask you, do any of you have that drawer at home with miscellaneous things that, things that don't have a natural place in any other category in the house? No one has that. And that's okay. Wow, tiny. Okay. So I think you may be able to relate to that. So after someone cleared out a deceased relative's house many years ago, her miscellaneous drawer was poured into a cardboard box. It was seemingly too small for anyone to bother about, because in 2019, it still sat there. It's been moved around from several attics, from several people, and it ended up with us in 2019. And at that point, we're like, okay, let's go through the box. It contained drive pens, phone bills from the 1990s, some rather dubious building applications from the 1960s. I won't go into detail, but no real highlights, to be honest. Until a small envelope with her husband's service records from his time at sea. An area is seen in the middle, this area is Strømsvag, top center in this photo. The most interesting service record in the collection of 3 in total that we found is this one, where he'd signed off in Kirkwall in October of 1939. That seems like a terrible idea, to sign off in Kirkwall in October 1939, as World War II was already raging in this area. And it became clear very soon to us that the reason he'd signed off was that the ship involuntarily ended its journey on Orkney. And you can see here, she looks ready to sail, but is in fact stuck on a reef. And she's there to this day, although in many more pieces I should add. In October and November of 1939, within 2 weeks of each other, 2 Scandinavian merchant ships ran around in Orkney, with great help from the Royal Navy prize crews that were on board. One of these was Emmy's ship. This is a massive story. Happy to keep talking about this at the Brian's later tonight. don't get me started on this, but it's not the reason I'm here today. But in summary, this went from a small family-related project, found with one document, to one of international collaboration with research in several countries, uncovering that these two sunken ships from October and November of 1939 impacted directly, significantly on the routines of the Royal Navy towards neutral shipping during non-controlled contraband control, during which neutral merchant ships would be boarded by the Royal Navy, diverted to Kirkwall for inspection. It impacted on the relationships between allies and not yet allied countries. For example, Norway was not yet part of the war. It impacted on merchant and passenger traffic in the North Atlantic at the early stages of the war. It led to the loss of a salvage ship and her crew. It led to a post-war trial against the Admiralty from one of the shipping owners, including the story of documents going missing because a Norwegian lawyer was executed with no prior warning by the Nazis in Norway. This document shows the instructions given to Norwegian ships by their shipping lines after the sinking of these two ships. This is a direct result of the sinking of these two ships. Norwegian shipping lines were not happy about Royal Navy taking command of those ships and then leaving them on reefs in Orkney. So this, I'm going to read it out loud but we can't see all of it. This was to be presented to the Royal Navy prize officers by Norwegian captains when the Royal Navy boarded. It says, to the best of my belief and knowledge, there is no reasonable ground to suspect that my vessel is employed in any kind of unlawful service. I therefore protest against the capture as being inconsistent with the law of nations. Capture may expose my vessel and all on board, as well as the cargo, to various very serious direct and indirect risks. And I must reserve for my owners and my underwriters, as well as for the owners of the goods and all others interested in the successful completion of the voyage, their rights to claim compensation for any consequential loss or damage. And to be clear, they said, this ship is now in your care and under your command. You have the sole and full responsibility of what may happen to her and all and everything on board. Any information given or any assistance rendered by myself or my crew in handling or navigating the vessel, or otherwise, should be considered as rendered and given in your service, and my owners undertake no responsibility whatever for errors or negligence in connection therewith. And this policy, this document, was a direct result of the sinking of these two ships. So again, I went from sort of an interesting family history to this. The core issue here was that Northern Patrol boarded ships, gave detailed instructions on the route to Kirkwall, but avoided formally taking command of the ship or assuming responsibility of the navigation. The defence was that the captain agreed to sail his vessel to Kirkwall, keeping in mind that he had just been boarded by 8 Royal Navy armed guards. Yes, they did agree to do that. And when these ships had ended up in the reefs of Orkney, this became a problem for all involved. We've uncovered documents from internal documents within the British legal team during the post-war trial in connection with one of these ships. And in memos within the British legal team that can be found with the trial documents, they noted the instructions given to the boat ships at the time on how to carry out contraband control. It's inconsistent between the price manual and its practice, concluding that some of the instructions are, to quote, something nearly devoid of logical meaning, and, quote, legal no man's land. The outcome of the trial in 1947 was interesting at the time as it would create a precedent for other cases avoiding clarification or liability. The Admiralty lost with open floodgates on damaged payments. We've located the chart of one of these ships. A small part you can see here, nothing logged after they were boarded over the Faroe Islands. And you can see a picture of the second ship, only a day after she went around, on the 1st of November 1939. And that is the ship that led to the trial. So I mentioned here today because it shows that you never know years putting together these documents, we know they've never been taken out of archives until now. And in October last year, we were able to present some of our findings to a packed Saturday Heritage Centre in Orkney to open populations that can go look at the wreck of one of these ships every single day. It still sits on the beach, as I said, in pieces, but it's there. And naturally, they knew nothing about the bigger history that ship fits into. And it all started with finding a small envelope in an old box. So hopefully you'll go home and look through those miscellaneous drawers after this. Or don't, because it will take over your life. So, as Kevin mentioned, I was asked to talk about inspiring explorers and the extension of the handling lesson. I can talk about inspiring explorers at length, and I'm fortunate to be surrounded by many of them, and trying to assemble some reflections that I believe thinking about their impact on others and their motivation. Norwegian philosopher and mountain climber Arne Næss was asked once by a journalist why he started climbing. He replied with a question: why did you stop? Pointing out that as children we all climb, but then some people stop. I was once present during an informal conversation over lunch between a journalist and Norwegian polar explorer who stated, as children we're all explorers. Some people stop exploring. And the journalist quickly scribbled a complete quote down, and a few months later we saw it on print. So it was totally inspired by Hugger. Thor Heyerdahl, my personal hero, was asked once if he could see no limits or borders to what he could pursue. Are there no limitations for you? And Heyerdahl replied, what do you mean by borders? I've never seen one, but I hear they exist in the minds of some people. Members of the exploration community will tell you that one of the reasons they seek to socialise with other explorers is that within the exploration tribe, no one will ask you why you want to put all your time, your money, your energy, your focus into your big goals and dreams. They will ask you, how are you going to do it? So the question by this logic is not why some people explore, it's rather why do some people stop? And those reasons may be many. They could be personal, they could be circumstances, it could be family reasons, responsibilities, life happening. Perhaps Albert Victor is one of those examples. Sometimes priorities and conscious choices. It picked something else. Or it was never really a dominant dream. The path to professional exploration is not easy for most people, however determined they might be. And the people I just quoted are exceptional explorers who worked very hard to make it their profession. So what about the rest of us? If you walk into a place like the Explorers Club in New York and ask a random member what made them pursue exploration, chances are great they will quote a person they knew, a family member, an explorer, a book, a film, something very specific that they feel is the source of their inspiration. These may not have been actually deciding factors that gave them a path in life, but it's how they see it now as being the source of their inspiration, and to this very day, in that sense, still counts as a good answer. So maybe we all need that inspiration and that push, and perhaps that confirmation that to keep exploring is a valid dream and goal. For many people, there are those specific happenings in life which changes things. Experiencing that moment where you become unstoppable and you don't listen to the people who tell you it can't be done. So just a little piece of advice: do not ever look into the Explorers Club and say, I don't think that's possible. It will not be popular. When I was 11, and I was smiling at that presentation a bit earlier, in reference to his North Pole drawing. When I was 11, I remember I decided I wanted to be an archaeologist. And I think I must have been brainwashed at an earlier age, because apparently my grandfather read Kon-Tiki out loud to me when I was 4. I don't remember that. But I do remember that when he passed away when I was 89, all the grandchildren were asked to pick a memento from my grandfather, and the only thing that mattered to me was his Tigris expedition book by Thorheim. However, at 11, wanting to be an archaeologist, I constantly had to defend to random people who had no impact on my life, but still felt the need to express their opinions on my career choices. Constantly had to defend how archaeology could be a real education, a profession, and not just like a really cool hobby with nothing more. Not very long. So from I was 50, I knew Thorheim personally, as we were part of the same expat Norwegian community in the Canary Islands. Thorheim said to me, archaeology is really exciting. There is so much to find. Go for it. And I can tell you, it doesn't matter much what other people tell you, or what they say and think, when Thorheim tells you to go for it. And that's when you become unstoppable. And there are so many more examples talk to explorers about their inspiration. You will find many stories like this. So here you see this is my grandfather's Tigris book, which I did get, with the signature of 3 crew members of the Tigris expedition I personally knew or know. And the picture is with Norman Baker, who's the navigator of all 3 of those expeditions led by Thorheim. And we're at the Explorers Club there. By the globe, we used to plan our Kon-Tiki expedition. So lots of little factors there. And to have those people around you makes all the difference. So think about that when you're own life. How you can inspire others to go for it, because it does impact. So anyone in the room with a similar experiences? Are there any Kon-Tikis, or is this purely Shackleton land? Does anyone say, I read the Shackleton book when I was 10 and I became inspired? There are a few of those. A few people nodding. Yeah? So when you write books and publish them, there are people out there who read those and become inspired. And that is the beginning of their paths as well. So explorers are problem solvers. When they're faced with a massive challenge, they will define the problem, they will keep their eyes on the goal, they will start dissecting it into smaller, more tangible goals, and they will try and break the puzzle into pieces and then start putting it back together. Børge Ausland, who most of you will be familiar with, living legend Norwegian polar explorer, was talking about when he and Mike Paul crossed the North Pole during winter in the dark, because clearly it was not challenging enough for them to do it in like season. So Børge said that the most important thing to remember during those difficult circumstances, when things seem a little hopeless, conditions are awful, he had one really important piece of advice. It was, don't give up. Which sounds like, it sounds like easy, not really when you're facing those conditions. So it may not be easy, but it does make you think about how do you stay focused and how do you not make excuses to not go where you want to be. And I committed straight out at the starting line here that I know probably the least of all of you at Shackleton, but I do feel like that philosophy might be something that he would be able to relate to. So it's quite possible that not everyone should be polar explorers or archaeologists, because, let's face it, it would be chaos. But there are ways to apply methods and mindsets from exploration in ways that can help us overcome challenges in everyday life. I used to run the education program at the Kon-Tiki Museum in Oslo. The museum is the custodian of the legacy of Thorheim. And the guests that I used to welcome were 2 very different groups, school kids and foreign dignitaries. I will leave it to you to guess which ones asked the most educated questions out of this group, but, you know, but I cannot even count the times that I've had people approach me about how reading the Kon-Tiki book page can inspire them forever, about how Haydn's expeditions, his philosophy, his dedication to tearing down cultural barriers, to contribute to environmental protection, the rights of indigenous peoples, had impacted and inspired them. And I love it every single time, it never gets old. So several months after a session with a small group of high school students from homes with a variety of challenges, the teacher called me and said that what the students had learned about Haydn and his mindset had inspired them to try and improve on their own lives, solve problems in their daily lives, and don't let anyone or anything let them tell them that it can be done. And I think Haydn would love to know that this is part of his legacy. Again, think about this in your own work when you meet those kids. They are impacted by those meetings. This summer, actually 4 months ago, just this weekend, when the exploration community was called upon to help friends in need on board the Titan submersible, they answered. They answered impulse with solutions, connections, and the bravery to act. And those of us who saw the rescue operation from the inside will forever regret not being able to change the outcome of that, but we also know exactly who to turn to in a crisis going forward. So part of being a problem solver and creating some tangible goals is preparation. So most explorers don't just run into the wilderness without some sort of idea of what they're trying to do and what they need in terms of skills and preparation and equipment. Most explorers I know are very occupied with risk mitigation. They're not seeking danger, they're rather seeking to minimize it. They're seeking to understand it so it exists at an acceptable level that they can work with. And then they go out and do things that can be quite dangerous. You don't go, if you're going to ski to the South Pole and adrenaline, that is not the kind of excitement they're looking for. They develop skills, they train so they can trust themselves, their reaction patterns, their own body, their kids, under extreme conditions. They respect those conditions. They bring the right equipment, they test the equipment. Does it work? Is this right for what I want to do? And this is just a very superficial summary. The point is, this thinking can be applied in everyday life and problem solving. And this may be some of the reason why explorers are inspirational to people who have no dream of ever seeing the South Pole. So to bring us a full circle back to the handling method, Astrid Fugholdt is a Norwegian polar explorer who spoke at this event in the previous year, I think last year. She's a good friend of mine, she's a cancer nurse. And what motivated her to pursue her dream of following the ski trails of Amundsen to the South Pole was that although through her profession, she met so many people during the very last days of their lives who wished they could grasp some of the opportunities that they had, who pursue those dreams that they had, even to have tried and failed. She promised herself to never have those regrets. And perhaps this might be a valid measurement of what constitutes a good life, to aim to not find oneself thinking, what if, when it's too late? I wish I had. So Albert Victor Hamlin never did join the West expedition, or as far as we know, any other expedition. In fact, it seems he never left Lancashire. He did, however, have the bravery and the inspiration to write to the king to join Shackleton's expedition. And as such, Albert Victor can inspire us, just like he was inspired by Shackleton. Towards the end of his life, he didn't have to say, I wish I'd written that letter all those years ago, I wish I'd tried. And I only think that his life was not wrecked because he could not go. Thank you.
Okay, we have time for a virtual question before going to the next lecture. Any questions for Synnøve? No, thanks very much.